I first met Norman in 1969. We had lunch in Prunier's in St James's. So that was when the firm was working on the Olsen terminal in Millwall Docks, and Architectural Design was publishing that. So when we published the Olsen building, and that was very interesting for me because it showed me two particular things which Foster's and Norman did really well. One was the small sketch, which somehow exemplified a whole and very complex project. That was one. And the other was the social aims of the Olsen building, which was the part that was designed for the staff, was very much designed to bring together the senior management and the workers. And I thought that was an interesting social element to Foster's architecture, which I think has continued on. At that time, when housing was being built out of solid concrete panels of, as I say, indifferent quality, Foster's were working on Willis Faber Dumar, for instance, which is a building where neoprene glass, suspended glass, new ways of actually using materials in a much more efficient way, much more elegant way, started to feed into the way that we built buildings. And those now, even though maybe high-tech is less fashionable, the elements of high-tech are actually in use all over the world and are part of the vernacular, really, of contemporary architecture. And again, this is something where Foster's were right at the cutting edge with how we relate architecture to construction. But if you look at the way that Foster's started with the development of the elements that went into the making of Hong Kong and Shanghai building, the work they did with couples of working really a design-build project where the architects worked very closely with the manufacturers, just in the same way as they'd started to work with engineers as well, right at the start of a project. And I think that's a big shift. It was the high-tech movement that's really brought in, and I suppose Team 4 did that with Tony Hunt right at the beginning, sit down day one and work together to collaborate. The same thing happened with design build, architects working together with contractors, and that was a big change. The future of architectural criticism is rather interesting at the moment because I think digital media has very much changed the way that architecture is discussed. And I'd say there are a lot of sites where there is very little debate about architecture. People in a sort of Instagram world have become obsessed by images and imagery. I think it's interesting when you look at a lot of computer-generated images. They have something about them which now I fear can actually make people mistrust them, because they often think that the final buildings, despite the fact these look very realistic, are not going to turn out in the way that they're being sold. And so I think there is a certain amount of trust which needs to be restored, particularly as we are going through a period where we want to get more involvement of local communities in development and in the designers. And as you see increasing use of VR and other ways of giving a sort of reality of a project, then I think those things do allow architects to communicate to a wider public much more easily than plans and drawings and perspectives of the past were able to do. That being said, I still think there is a huge place for good hand drawing to explain particular issues. And again, this is something where Foster's have led on in terms of delivering sketches which encapsulate a project in a very important way, very iconic way, and explain how a project works, and that communicates very well to the general public as well. Well, I guess I look at the future of cities with some optimism, but some concerns as well. I do think we are seeing a shift in cities around the world to make them more livable, where streets are seen to be for people and not just the movement of vehicles. And some new technologies will actually make that better. Walking and cycling is becoming more popular, partly because it's a great way to get around, but also it creates healthier citizens. But then I do worry about what the impact of autonomy will be on the city, because it seems that very few cities around the world, and London is among them, do not have any real policies as how they're going to deal with autonomous vehicles in the future. So we need to look at ideas about how do we deliver more sustainable, denser cities, and we do that in a way that creates great spaces, great places for people to live. It means building taller probably in many places, and densifying our suburban areas, which is going to be difficult because people living in suburbs don't really want to have development in their backyard. But we are, I think, a city which has fundamental strengths of diversity, of flexibility, of pragmatism, and that will allow us to change and develop into the future.